I got the water for the last speaker.
So hi everybody, my name is Melinda, I'm an addict.
Melinda!
For those of you who don't know me, if you guys are in treatment, you'll see me once you go over to 505. I'm a case manager there. So yeah, props to Frankie, definitely a good speaker. And whoever says it's easy to come up here, it's not, no matter how many times you do it. So a little bit about, my background. I came from a family of addicts. Grew up, kind of bounced around different places, moved around a lot, and was in, one of those that's like, I'm never gonna be like that. So I used everything in my willpower to try to not follow into the steps of my family. I was the top of my classes. I was the first one in my family to graduate. And after that, I was the know-it-all teenager. Unfortunately, I had, okay, I'm a little nervous. So then it came to the point of, I'm not gonna do that, and I did that, right? I have family of addicts, I have family of alcoholics, and one day it was just like, let me see what it's about. Obviously, having a bloodline of addicts, it took me very quickly. Like it says in the steps, I put the drugs before my family, I put it before my spouse, I put it before anything and everybody. It was the one thing that I saw after so hard that I was willing to just give up anything. I had my first child when I was 17, and it didn't work out with me and the father, so it was kind of like I'm doing it on my own. Again, I was a stubborn little kid who really didn't know much. And then I met my husband. There's a lot that goes before that, but I'm gonna skip some stuff. And actually, one of the things is, as a child, I was, again, abandoned by my father. So it led me to be very, very ignorant in some areas, where fear ruled a lot of stuff that I did. One of the things was fear of being abandoned again and fear of being alone. With that, I kind of lost my dignity. I lost everything because I went through a domestic violence relationship. After having my second child, going through DV, through addiction, and really just kind of starting from nothing again. I kind of had to learn to humble myself, and I humbled myself fast. Definitely the drugs did it for me, but after it came to a point of wanting to do it for myself. I don't remember what it said. So it's a lot easier for me to encourage other people, obviously. For those that know me, know I'm bubbly, very encouraging. And it comes from a place, obviously, of growing up broken. I was a people pleaser. I tried to do anything and everything to make other people happy because of my fear that if they weren't happy, they were gonna leave me too. So again, in that relationship, it was kind of brought back down to nothing. For those of you who don't know, I'm married to Raul. And our relationship was really toxic. I could go on from the arguments to the DV to, infidelity to whatever you want to call it. And it was horrible. Both of us being in our addiction together, it was toxic. Of course, she couldn't tell us that because, again, I was ignorant. So what I thought was like, oh, that's so cute, whatever. Those should have been red flags, but I didn't know better, right? Because I was going to do everything I could to not be like my family, to not be like, just another one of those, And by me trying not to be like everybody else, I was the first in my family for a lot of things, good and bad. Again, I was the first in my family to graduate. I was the first in my family to have children, but I was the first in my family to have a DCFS case and get my kids taken away. I was the first in my family to lose a baby, just for medical reasons. And a lot of that brought shame, guilt, emptiness, and emotions that I let kind of just overrule everything else. Because it's like, oh, you have kids, you should know that, Oh, you have kids, you should be able to stop doing drugs. Oh, you have kids, you should go and be in a healthy environment. And really, my addiction was like, you ain't gonna leave me. And I didn't. And unfortunately, it took us to lose our kids. And it kind of was like a yellow light, I would call it, right? Kind of a little hesitant, not all the way stopped, but enough to keep me aware of things. And then, we lost our baby. It was another yellow stop for a little bit, get my awareness, get my head on straight, process some of the things, right? But how did I do that? Using drugs. It wasn't until I had lost my mom that it was kind of like the glue that held me together really wasn't there to keep me together anymore. After that, it was kind of me against the world. My kids were taken away, so instead of using that as motivation to get better, it's kind of like I got a babysitter, and as sick as it was, that was a mindset I was in. It went from being a loving, caring people person, making sure everyone else was good, to realize that I was really broken inside. And, no matter how much I used, how much I drank, the people who I'd be around, the little encouragements, there wasn't anything making it better. It's kind of like sweeping the dust under the rug. And eventually the pile's just gonna get so big, you're gonna trip over it. After about a year and a half after my mom passed away, I decided one day I was done. Lo and behold, a couple weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. Running through my head was definitely fear. I didn't have my other kids. How am I gonna manage having another one? The guilt of, what would my children feel knowing, hey, mom didn't stop for me, but she stopped for that kid. Just a lot of thoughts, right? The anxiety started being crippling. And it was a lot of sleepless nights. And then I decided enough was enough. I checked myself into rehab. My husband was supposed to go the day before me, and he backed out. And I was left with the decision of, what am I gonna do? I always thought about everyone's needs and wants and emotions and how are they gonna feel, how was it gonna affect them? Because to me, if I wasn't there, the world was gonna fall around, right, at my feet. And that's not the reality. I think if anything, my life probably affected 2% of the people that I thought it was going to. And I made the choice, and I was like, you didn't go, but I have to go. Again, there was a lot of things on the line, my children being taken away, DCFS involved, me finding out I was pregnant, a lot of everything were what ifs. About 2 months into rehab, it was Christmas time, and I found out my daughter went with her biological father, somebody who she hadn't known. And although in that time it was a safe space for her, to me, I was angry. Like, I was angry at the world. I was angry at DCFS. I was angry at my husband, and I was angry at anybody and everybody, but not myself. And I kind of let that rule me. Again, I fell into a funk. I was super depressed. I was pregnant, and still everything with my pregnancy was up for adoption. Was up for like what was in the air. I was gonna choose adoption. I found the perfect family that I seen online that they're like, oh, they're gonna take care of them. Because my mind was telling me, you're not gonna be a good parent. You weren't before, you're not gonna be anything else. I got out of treatment and I was like, oh, I could do this. I'm clean. And what did I do? I went back to the same place, to my grandpa's house, where everyone there was using. And I was like, well, let's go. Sure enough, fell back into my addiction. But they call it a lapse, right? Not where you're relapsing, continued use to everything. I sat down and I took a hit of a pipe and I was like, what am I doing? It was disgusting. My thoughts were everywhere. And I was like, I'm done. And I actually just celebrated my 4 years last week. But again, because I did that now, everything's high risk. For those of you who've been through DCFS know, once you have one case, you're already high risk for anything else that comes after. My son was born, and that day changed me. And it's something that a love of a kid is just something different. Why this one was different than my other kids, I don't know. Only God knows, right? And then to the flip side, after I had my son, DCFS basically said we were high risk. He didn't get to go home with us. He actually went to a foster home. Luckily, somebody in our church was like, we're willing to take him, which made it a little bit easier knowing that he was with somebody that I guess you could say that we trusted. So as time goes on, we're doing what we need to do. And I say we because eventually my husband went into rehab too. He actually got sober the day my son was born. But for those of you guys in relationships know, we could walk the same path, but we're never gonna be on the same step. So one highly encouraging thing is if you're in a relationship, make sure your recovery is solid because your partner's recovery won't keep you clean. With that being said, we were able to get into programs. Unfortunately, because of COVID, it was outpatient and outpatient only, meaning there were no places that had availability for me to live, like Fred Brown. I unfortunately didn't get the chance to go through Fred Brown. Had I did, I think it would be an amazing experience. But it was hard because that was a true test of if I wanted to get sober or not. We were living in a house full of people still getting high, people still drinking, people still doing their own thing, and we're outside on our classes, separately on our phones. Just knowing really if I wanted to, I could walk in the other room and go get high with my cousins or whoever else was in there. And my reason for my recovery the second time was for myself. You could do it, you could have other motivators, definitely. For those of you who have kids, families, whatever that's motivating you, awesome. The more the merrier. But really, unless your recovery is for yourself, it's easy to slip. We started going to church, dedicated myself to the Lord, and I started being like just involved. I started serving in ministries, ushering, teaching the children, Lord knows patience for that. And everything just started to seem to slowly get calmer. There was a peace in the chaos, as you may. And with that, with the consistency and with us walking our walk, we were able to start seeing our other children, and that progressed. Who now we have one of the two, and our son back now. But I wasn't going to meetings every week. I wasn't calling a sponsor. I wasn't doing my steps because I was doing it the church way, or so now I know is the church way, right? I had Bible study every Friday. I was calling my Bible study leader at least 3 times a week and going to church service. And I remember the first time when the court was like, we need you to do meetings. And again, I have a family full of addicts, not recovering addicts, so I didn't know what a meeting was. I remember going to inner city for the first time, and I walk in and I'm sitting all the way in the back and I'm just hearing people share. And it's like, wow, I can relate to that, right? Or they have a really good piece of advice and it's like, wow, I'm gonna take that. And when they started, that was just before getting to kind of hear people. And when they went through the steps, it was really amazing because it's like I had did those, right? I had did it, but on my own, but through my faith. Admitting I was powerless. There was times that I broke down and I was just like, God, I can't do this. Even after I had my recovery, I think I was like 6 months in and I broke down to my Bible study leader, like, I'm not good enough for this. My kids don't deserve me, my blah, 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 whatever it was that really had got to me that day. And again, multiple things that I was like, oh, that's familiar. I can really relate to all of that stuff. So that definitely opened my eyes on what the meetings were and what the rooms were about. Eventually got a sponsor, worked the steps with somebody because that's always key, and really just kind of was hitting the check boxes. What are my requirements? Okay, let me do this. A, B, and C, I got that. And it started becoming a little bit redundant, and I noticed, oh, hey, my cravings that day, and oh, hey, I was really short-tempered that day, and I realized it's not just a one and done thing. It's a reoccurring thing. For those of you in NA, they know, when one is not enough or one is never enough and 1,000 is too many. And those thoughts are slowly fading away in those times where I was not in meetings, where I was not talking to somebody, where I was not in church, where I was not serving. And come now 4 years, obviously, if somebody says that everything is going to stop, it's a lie, right? We're human. We can't stop our emotions. We can't stop our feelings. We can't stop a lot of the triggers. We can stop most of them, right? I realized once we got our son back, we need to go. I can't be here. And one of the hardest things is to leave my family. They were the ones that were there with me since I was little, right? We had what I call a trauma bond, right? Me and my cousins would talk, we would joke, oh, blah, 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 just stupid stuff. Oh, we remember that. We were abandoned like that. We were, oh, remember when the cops raided the house type stuff, and just sit there and laugh. And in reality, it was a sick, twisted childhood that we all had. And I had to kind of pull myself away from being responsible for my family and the recovery. I had to learn how to have boundaries, which was hard for me, especially being a people pleaser. I always liked to say yes to everybody. I was a yes man. You need me? I got you. Whatever it is. If it's way out of my possibility of doing it, don't worry, I'm gonna do it, even though I didn't know how. And then when I would fall short, I'd be upset. And I had to learn, again, the boundaries. I had to learn my limitations. I'm only human. I had to learn that my self-will is not going to get me anywhere. But my reliance on my higher power took me everywhere. It took me to meet new people. It took me to start new ministries. Me and my husband are now Bible study leaders. If you would have asked me like 6 years ago, I'd have been like, church? Who? What? Because I knew about church. I knew of a God, but I didn't know my God then. I knew of a God who I had hated and actually cursed because we had a baby who passed away. I knew of a God who let a lot of people be sick. I knew of a God who allowed a lot of addiction, mental illness, and whatever you name it. But I didn't know my God, who allows things for a purpose. I didn't know my God, who is a restorer, who is just a mighty man of many miracles. What I know now, I try to use to encourage others, because my life is nothing if I'm not willing to share it with somebody else. Our life is a lifesaver sometimes. And when I thought I was just going to be somebody who's not like my family, you know, it's easy to try to put young and dumb together to try to make something, and it doesn't always work the way it does. I can plan things now, and if they don't go my way, I'm like, okay, another day. You know, I'm a little bit late to work. Okay, another day. But I sit here now smiling with gratitude. Do I have everything that I want? Absolutely not. Do I have everything I need? Absolutely. Am I where I was yesterday? Absolutely not. Am I where I need to be? For today, I am. But am I going to shoot for more? Absolutely. My encouragement to all of you guys is make sure you have at least 5 people around you that you can call on any time of day. Because we're all humans, and if you have one person and that person doesn't answer, are you sober enough and in your mindset enough where you're going to say, I'm not going to pick up today? Another thing is, last week I like how, I don't remember who said it, but it's a wraparound program. You can't just work the steps only and not do meetings or not have accountability and think it's going to work. And if they're pushing you, allow it, because they're pushing you for a reason. Because we're not going to grow anywhere if we're comfortable all the time. Another thing is, since I've been working here at Fred Brown, I get the honor of working with a lot of you fine people. And when they say recovery is not a solo deal, it's not. And recovery is not easy all the time. But surrounding yourself with really rich people, rich in heart and soul and patience and knowledge, is going to get you guys where you need to be. My name is Melinda. Thank you for letting me share.